Heya Cryptozens, welcome back to the Crypto Overnighter. My name is Nikodemus and we do crypto news analysis nightly at 10 p.m. And keep in mind, none of this should be considered financial advice. And it's Wednesday, February 8th, 2023. I hope your week has been a kind one. Now, let's take a look at the news. And interesting and scary news from Coinbase tonight. Just moments ago, word came out on Twitter that SEC has their sights set on staking. Coinbase CEO Brian Armstrong used Twitter to get out the word about the, quote, terrible path the U.S. would be on if the SEC were successful in restricting crypto staking in the U.S. He said, quote, we're hearing rumors that the SEC would like to get rid of crypto staking in the U.S. for retail customers. Staking is not a security. This comes after comments from Chair Gensler last year that hinted that the SEC would classify proof-of-stake tokens as securities. Armstrong highlights the importance of encouraging companies to grow in the U.S., not to strangle them with a lack of clear rules and a regulation by enforcement type approach. He said, quote, it's a matter of national security that these capabilities be built out in the U.S. Regulation by enforcement doesn't work. It encourages companies to operate offshore, which is what happened with FTX. And let's keep things going with the first of 3 CBDC alerts, because the Central Bank of India is signaling that they're ready to go forward with testing a digital rupee. That said, even though they started working on their own digital fiat a couple of months ago, they didn't want to rush into things. And you can see that with how they scaled their pilot. Since its launch last year, their retail digital rupee pilot has onboarded 50,000 users and 5,000 merchants. Ravi Shankar is the deputy governor at the Reserve Bank of India, and he says it's the government's intent to move forward with digital fiat testing in the smoothest way possible. He said, quote, we have our targets in terms of users, in terms of merchants, we will go slowly. He said that they're committed to this, that the bank wants it to happen, but they want a slower, more gradual pace. He said that they're in no big hurry to get things going. If you go to the official digital rupee application at the time of writing, it shows that it's closed, that they're not taking any more users at this point. Shankar said the program has handled 770,000 transactions since December 1st. The project spans 8 banks and 5 cities. Their intent is to have 5 more banks and 9 more cities join the pilot soon. Now keep in mind, this is a retail CBDC. A wholesale central bank digital currency has been in the works since November of 2022. This came after announcements in early 2022 that the digital rupee would be a, quote, big boost for the Indian economy. And in their proposal, they suggested a 3-tier approach to keep things as smooth and steady as possible. Meanwhile, in Russia, smooth and steady are on the minds of Russia's Gazprom Bank. Gazprom Bank is a subsidiary of Gazprom, which is a state-owned energy corporation. And frankly, they're worried that they're going to lose money when the digital ruble comes out. And that's the state-sponsored coin. No wonder they're terrified of real cryptocurrency. And that fear is pushing them to delay the onset of their digital ruble, even though their country is facing economic hardships due to the global financial sanctions they've been under since the invasion of the Ukraine. Now, Gazprom Bank is one of 15 banks working on their digital ruble project, and they put out a statement cautioning a slow and steady approach. They said, quote, it's imperative that banks take measures to mitigate potential losses. They said it's important to be aware of the risks that a digital ruble presents and to adopt a slow and steady approach to give the traditional finance firms time to adjust. And it shows that the central bankers are right to fear crypto. I mean, look at the damage that their cheap knockoff central bank digital currency did to their own systems. Consultants in Russia, formerly of McKinsey Consulting, said that the potential losses for traditional banks is around $3.5 billion in 5 years if they implement a digital ruble. $3.5 billion. No wonder they're afraid. Now, in the meantime, they said retailer profits would be up $1.1 billion yearly. Now, what does that tell you about where a lot of the waste in the TradFi system is? You knock the middlemen out of the equation and things get cheaper. If you find that you don't need 90% of your tellers anymore because almost nobody is going to a branch, you just saved yourself a ton of HR costs because a lot of infrastructure costs like that would go away. And a lot of that infrastructure is there solely to benefit the TradFi system, not the Russian citizens, not the Russian economy. As it stands, the Ukraine invasion only accelerated what's happening in Russia now. Work on a digital ruble actually started in 2020, and they're expecting the project to be completed by the end of this year. What that means is the Bank of Russia is planning to connect banks to their digital ruble program starting in 2024. So that's when Russia's program is expected to roll out. Meanwhile, the UK announced that they were at the beginning of their program. Today marked the official launch of their digital pound project. After much work and much preparation, the UK's Bank of England launched its digital pound project. They called it a new form of digital money, and they were playing up the potential a digital currency represents. Now, this digital pound would only be issued by the Bank of England. Money would be accessible either by using a card or a smartphone app. This information comes to us from a consultation document published on Tuesday. Jeremy Hunt and Andrew Bailey put out a joint statement, and they are the Chancellor of the Exchequer and the Governor of the Bank of England. In their statement, they said, quote, "A UK central bank digital currency, a digital pound, would be a new form of digital money for use by households and businesses for their everyday payments needs." Now remember, it was just last week that the UK government put out a new regulatory regime for governing crypto, specifically on licensing crypto service providers, all of which is in line with Rishi Sunak's stated goal of turning England into a fintech hub. That said, as you can see from our conversation tonight, the UK is lagging well behind even its close neighbors in the Eurozone. They've been working on their own digital euro for some time, even though there's no official commitment to implementing one. That decision is expected to happen sometime in October. Now, it could be that the Bank of England's John Cunliffe was looking at the Bank of Russia's notes, because the deputy governor said a digital pound, quote, could implement and support new forms of private digital money and payment services, specifically driving down the costs of using things like a credit card. He also highlighted the costs of overseas remittances, and that's something even a digital fiat could help with. So they're looking for public comment, and they want the public to be very aware that, like we were saying earlier, they're just now getting started on this. So right now, any plans are in an early stage and may in fact never be used. Which, okay, fine. Let them explore it. I say that because there will be some overlap in the usage of a digital pound and a stablecoin pegged to the pound. And a lot of the concerns will be similar. And at this point, they haven't even committed to a prototype yet. They said that if there is sufficient political and public demand for one, they would design and build a prototype before moving on to the pilot phase. Cunliffe said, quote, "The work over the next 2 to 3 years will inform that decision and will reduce the lead time to launch should the decision at the end of the stage be to implement the digital pound in the UK, which could then be introduced in the second half of the decade." As far as privacy goes, the proposal said wallets would be made anonymous right on the ledger. They also claim the money would be non-programmatic. That means that they're claiming that they can't surveil how you use your money and they can't control how you spend your money. They're also suggesting a £20,000 limit to prevent deposits from flooding out of the banking system. So there's a 4-month consultation period for the public to record their responses. And then, beyond that, even if one is selected, it's going to be years before the infrastructure is likely to be in place. Now, even the central bankers have a bank. It's called the Bank for International Settlements, or BIS. And the BIS is expanding their digital fiat research, specifically focusing on experimenting with digital currencies this year. They're also planning on launching a project to monitor stablecoins. And so it was that yesterday, the 7th of February, the BIS said their innovation hub would be more focused on central bank digital currencies this coming year. They said that the coming work schedule includes something called Project PYXTRIAL, PYXTRIAL. Now, PYXTRIAL is supposedly a new project by the Innovation Hub to monitor stablecoins. What that means is that they're going to be monitoring the balance sheet of stablecoins. They said that this is something that most central banks can't do. They lack the tools to, quote, systematically monitor stablecoins and avoid asset liability mismatches. They said, quote, the project will investigate various technological tools that may help supervisors and regulators to build policy frameworks based on integrated data. They said central bank digital currencies and payment systems have been the focus of 15 out of the last 26 projects from the last couple of years. They said a lot of that is coming from the awareness of central banks. Quote, this emphasis reflects the interests and priorities of central banks and the G20 countries' program to improve cross-border payments. Now, we were just talking about the Bank of England, and they have a special role to play in all this. They're going to be working with the BIS on an open API. This open API is how they plan on distributing a retail CBDC. This project is called Rosalind. This comes as BIS concluded a pilot program last September. It was called mBridge for Multiple CBDC Bridge. 4 central banks from China, Thailand, Hong Kong, and the UAE were part of that program. As it stands, 11 countries have fully implemented a digital fiat system. All but 1 are located in the Caribbean. The exception is Nigeria. Now, on the other side of things, instead of instituting coins, Dubai is looking to ban some. In Dubai, they banned the issuance of and all activities related to privacy coins. Monero, for example. New laws published Tuesday make them illegal. This is part of the new rules that they rolled out. These rules set licensing and authorization requirements for virtual asset companies that want to operate in Dubai. So they laid out a definition for this banned type of currency. Quote, a type of virtual asset which prevents the tracing of transactions or record of ownership through distributed public ledgers and for which the virtual asset service provider has no mitigating technologies or mechanisms to allow traceability or identification of ownership. So this sort of ban is also being considered in the EU. Basically tokens that make it harder to trace them down to their source. Angela Ng is the senior policy advisor at TRM Labs. She said, quote, any obfuscation of fund flows poses a challenge to detecting illicit activities, so it is unsurprising that regulators react strongly to these kinds of asset classes and mechanisms. Crypto activities in Dubai fall under the purview of their Virtual Assets Regulatory Authority. Set up last year, VARA is intended to draw crypto and blockchain companies to the region. On Valentine's Day, the U.S. Senate Banking Committee intends to hold a hearing called Crypto Crash: Why Financial System Safeguards Are Needed for Digital Assets. And they have a number of witnesses scheduled to appear at that hearing, and that number is 3. You've got Yesha Yadav, a Vanderbilt University law professor. You've got Lee Reiners, policy director for Duke Financial Economics Center, and Georgetown lecturer Linda Jang. Now, this hearing is expected to take a closer look at the crash of the crypto market in 2022 and explore needed regulation that may come from it. So it's been a couple of months since U.S. lawmakers have met to talk specifically about the crypto space and potential regulations from the collapse of the FTX exchange. The witnesses were very different last time, including crypto opponent Ben McKenzie and Shark Tank's Kevin O'Leary. This was after Sam Bankman-Fried was due to show up to answer to Congress in person for his actions. That fell through as Sam was arrested in the Bahamas. And while SBF is getting a lot of press these days, there are still a couple of other individuals of note, notorious names from the events of 2022. Kyle Davies, for example, remember him? He's co-founder of the failed Three Arrows Capital, and apparently he's just ghosting Three Arrows Capital liquidators. In a filing with the U.S. Bankruptcy Court of the Southern District of New York, lawyers representing Three Arrows Capital's liquidators said Davies had, quote, chosen to ignore his duties to Three Arrows. That's in reference to the subpoena he was served via Twitter. A subpoena courts in both Singapore and the U.S. authorized. And it was authorized because nobody knows where Davies or his partner Zuzu are. This subpoena orders Davies to turn over information. They want account information, including seed phrases and private keys. They also want details of where funds might be held on centralized or decentralized exchanges. The filing said, under the terms of the subpoena order and the subpoena, Mr. Davies was required to respond by electronic production to counsel for the foreign representatives by January 26, 2023. He did not. Now, another missing founder is Do Kwon. He has said many times that he's not on the run, that he's not hiding, just nobody can find him. And so now, South Korean officials are asking Serbian authorities to help out. Apparently, a couple of South Korean officials made the trek out to Serbia to find Do Kwon. That's after a report last December from Chosun Media. That report places Do Kwon in Serbia, which, if he's there, I guess that's good for him, because there's no extradition treaty between Serbia and South Korea. However, any future travel might be difficult, as South Korea has canceled his passport. And that's going to do it for us tonight. I want to thank you, my listeners, because when you stop listening, I will stop talking. If you enjoyed tonight's show, please like, follow, subscribe. Anything to let the algorithms know that you like this content. In the meantime, we'll see you tomorrow night.